Olympos by Dan Simmons, book review. So this book is a sequel to Ilium, also by Dan Simmons, which I reviewed previously. Although actually sequel isn't really the right word to it. What this is just kind of one huge story that they've split into 2 volumes. I assume just because it was too large to put into one binding. A marketing quibble here. When I was in the bookstore sorting this out, it was not clear what the relationship between these books were. I think the blurb on the book said something like, but by the same author of Ilium or something like that. And if I was to be cynical, I would guess that they did that because they didn't want to say like, don't buy this book, read Ilium first and then buy this book, otherwise this won't make any sense. They don't want to say that because they're hoping you'll just kind of buy it on impulse or whatever. I don't know, maybe some people impulsively grab these books. But this book does not make any sense unless you've read Ilium first. Possibly this review isn't going to make a lot of sense unless you've read Ilium first, but I'll try my best. The premise of Ilium, actually there's a whole bunch of things going on, but the marketable premise, the one that they sell the book with, is that the Trojan War is happening again in the future. Yeah, I know that's strange, but that's the premise of the book. And then there's a whole bunch of other things also going on in the future. So, same thing, when I reviewed Ilium, I said I thought that the retelling of the Trojan War sections, actually specifically the Iliad sections, were excellent. But that's only 1/3 of the book. And then there's all this other stuff going on, which I was somewhat less enthusiastic about. Now, at this point in the story, Dr. Hockenberry, who is supposed to be observing the Trojan War happening in the future, has decided, enough of this, I'm going to try and make peace between the Greeks and the Trojans and kind of take this war off course. So at this point in the story, the Trojan War is now off course. You still have the characters from Homer's Iliad, but they're off in a completely different story now, which is all the more fun, really. Take the characters from Homer's Iliad and follow them up on a new adventure. But again, that's only 1/3 of the book, maybe even less. I didn't, do a scientific measurement, but it's a smaller portion of the book. The rest of the book deals with a post-apocalyptic future, being terrorized by cyborg killing machines, resurrected dinosaurs, Caliban and the characters from Shakespeare's The Tempest, which are also mixed in here. There's some strange kind of half-organic robots from Jupiter. Does it all tie together at the end? Kind of. It doesn't come together as cleanly as I would like. And I think it got a little bit too bizarre at the end. I also, again, same criticism I had with Ilium, I kept wanting to hear more about the Trojan War characters. I wasn't as interested in the other characters and the original storylines that Dan Simmons had created. At this point, there's just too many plot threads going on, and I don't think that any of them really get justice. The plot, to the extent that there is a plot, becomes this huge monster of a storyline. It has several loose ends. By the time you get to the end of the book, there's all these plot lines that never got satisfactorily resolved. All these plot lines that never get resolved. There's all these unanswered questions by the time you get to the end of the book. And furthermore, by the time you get to the end of the book, you realize that a lot of these plot threads were completely unnecessary. you could have pulled a lot of these plot threads and they wouldn't have made a difference. In fact, I hate to say it, but the whole Trojan War plot thread, you know, the part of the book that was kind of the marketing angle, that really didn't impact any of the other plot threads at all, or very minimally. So you could have pulled that, and it really wouldn't have affected the rest of the book. In other words, the whole reason I was reading this book, the retelling of the Trojan War story, didn't really have much to do with this book. Furthermore, there's a lot of errors going on in this book. Now, some of these errors are problems with the original Greek mythology, like Dan Simmons has just gotten confused about the chronology of the Trojan War. Some of these errors are kind of internal to Dan Simmons' own story. In other words, there are kind of plot holes or continuity errors within his own story. All of this together indicates to me that somebody just lost control of this book in the editing process, or somebody just stopped caring, because there seems to be very little editorial oversight about the continuity of this book. And you know, like, I understand, like, if you have like a long series of books, there's going to be continuity errors. But you know, this is just kind of over the course of one book. Somebody should have kept a closer eye on this. So there's a lot of examples in here, but I'm just going to give one. In the book, it's claimed at one point that Sarpedon was killed by Patroclus, which is kind of true. In Homer's Iliad, Patroclus does kill Sarpedon. But in Dan Simmons' retelling of the story, Professor Hockenberry diverts the course of the Trojan War before we get to that point where Patroclus would have killed Sarpedon. So those last chapters of the Iliad where that would have happened never got to unfold within Dan Simmons' story. But he seemed to have forgotten at which point he's diverted from the Trojan War. Either that, or he's just forgotten the chronology of the Trojan War. It didn't spoil the book, but it annoyed me, all these little errors and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. On the whole, these two books, Ilium and Olympos, maybe I'd recommend them. You know, it doesn't come together as a coherent whole, but you know, if you're looking for something to divert you, there's some interesting stuff going on here to divert with. Or I don't know, maybe I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend it with caution. I'd recommend it. Take Lost. I'm going to make an analogy with Lost. Imagine somebody has never seen Lost. And you say to them, okay, there's some interesting stuff going on here, but just be forewarned, it's not all going to make sense at the end. I guess that's the same analogy I'd use with these books.